Hello, friends. We're back again on the Somi Substack channel. I'm Hugh Smiley, and I have a wonderful guest today, Raja Khouri, who is Raja. I was reading your bio online, Wikipedia, and it was so replete. I got dizzy almost. I thought, what am I going to say? I don't know where to start. Anyway, Raja is uh, from a family or background of Palestinian refugees in Lebanon and has lived in Canada for many years and has been very involved in uh, everything from banking insurance, and civic society, working for peace and conflict and negotiation. Well, dialogue is supposed to be a better word, authentic dialogue. And especially a couple of years ago, wrote with a co-author, Jeffrey Wilkinson, a Jewish man from America, United States, living in Canada. Wonderful book called The Wall Between. And the subtitle is What Palestinians and Jews Do Not Want to Know About Each Other, something like that, right? So, welcome to the Substack, Raja. I'm so happy you're here. I know you're a busy guy, and you've very graciously and kindly given us a bit of your time. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing lots from you. And we have about half an hour, maybe a little bit more.
Pleasure to be here, Hugh, and I always like to take the opportunity to spread our message of peace and justice and cultural understanding and intercultural understanding. So happy to answer your questions.
Mhm. Well, I have a few perhaps, or I don't have a list, but we sort of go ad lib, um, making it up as we go along. And I'm hoping that you will have most of the time on the microphone, but I may throw in a little question or comment here and there. But I
Sure.
noticed that you wrote a book in 2003 called Arabs in Canada. And I'm just thinking that since that time, I'm a statistics fiend. I love tracking populations and things like that, demographics especially.
Hmm.
And probably since that time, in 22 years, the Arab population in Canada has doubled with immigration and the slightly higher birth rate than the average. So um, I know that the conversation, the dysfunctional dialogue between Palestinians and Jews is something that you and Jeffrey, your colleague and co-author and Jewish friend, um, are very much aware of and trying to break through that barrier that so often emerges. But I'm wondering, as an Arab in Canada, and also very aware of the Jewish population and involved in different conversations, have you noticed a shift with the demographic shift? Because probably 25 years ago, there were almost the same number of Jews and Arabs in Canada, and now Arabs are at least double. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a tectonic shift as far as relationship goes because of demographics. Because, sorry, demographics in Israel is such an important issue around one state, two state, three state solution and all that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, luckily in Canada, we don't have any one group wanting to maintain a majority of some sort, even though, of course, the British and French heritage of this country continues to dominate.
Mhm.
Yeah, the size of the Arab community and Jewish community back in the 90s, if you want, and it was more or less, very similar in
Equal.
numbers. Today, there's more than 1 million Arabs in Canada.
Right.
Jewish community estimated to be around 400,000. So it grew just a little bit, not a whole lot.
Mhm.
Um, Now, in terms of the organization of the community itself, there's no comparison really in terms of how organized the Jewish community is and how disorganized the Arab community is.
Uh-huh.
Because if you look at, well, for one thing, I mean the Jewish community institutions have been around since the early 20th century, been
Right.
around longer. And they are, well funded and well run, well administered. Whereas there isn't one Arab community. I mean, I know the Jewish community is not, homogeneous either.
Right.
But you're either Jewish or you're not. And in the Arab community, some people have more allegiance to their country of origin, to their religion.
Yes.
Uh,
Right.
Many Arabs don't even consider themselves Arab. They would say they are Arabic speaking.
Right.
So the Arab identity is very fluid.
Mhm.
And it used to be in decades ago that the Palestinian cause was a unifying factor for all Arabs, and
Yeah.
they would all believe in that cause and support it. But then, if you look at the last 25 years or so, we've had so many wars in the region, so many countries becoming dysfunctional um, as a result of wars. Whether it was the invasion of Iraq in 2003
Yeah.
or the many civil wars that started as a result of the Arab Spring. So you have now a number of communities in distress. If you count the Iraqis, the Syrians, Lebanese, Yemenis, Libyans, these have all had civil wars as well, except for Lebanon, of course. Lebanon has its own issues.
Yes.
But the Arab Spring countries, if you want,
Right.
have settled down.
Mm.
Um, Egypt is a little different in the sense that essentially there was a military coup that overturned the Arab Spring outcome, which was a government by the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
So you've got all of these communities here from these countries that are distressed and in trouble. Their first concern is not Palestine, or I mean, of course, they still feel something towards it, but their attention, their emotions, their stresses are coming from their own places of birth and or where
Yes.
they came from,
Yes.
and so everybody's kind of busy with their own issue, you know. And then, of course, you had the sectarian divisions that happened in the region that between Sunni and Shia
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
have had their, local repercussions in Palestine. Of course, there was a split between Fatah
Yes.
and Hamas. Fatah, of course, was running the Palestinian Authority,
Uh-huh.
and the community here also split along those lines. Um, so it's hard to organize the Arab community. I know that I say that from experience. You know, I was VP and then president of the Canadian Arab Federation for about
Right.
6 years,
Wow.
and then I started the Canadian Arab Institute back in 2012 and ran it for 4 years or 5 years. So it's hard. There's the glue that brings the Arabs together has been weakened a lot. It wasn't very strong to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
After the end of the Arab nationalist movement in the 70s. Of course, it was strongest in the 50s and 60s
Right.
when Abdel Nasser was
Yeah.
in Egypt, had adopted this Arab nationalist movement as a unifying force
Yeah.
for the region. And then after, it lost the 67 war, it began to weaken. I mean, the 67 war really was supposed to be the crown of the Arab nationalist movement and freeing Palestine from Israel and reclaiming it as part of the Arab world. And they failed in 48, and then they failed again in 67. And then Sadat became president in Egypt, and he started moving away from all of that nationalism. And there was a vacuum that eventually was replaced by Islamist movements that dominated politically and socially
Mhm.
in a number of countries and regions, and that continues until today. Of course, the Islamic Revolution in Iran sort of ushered in that,
That's right.
Islamistic.
Because before that, like Nasser's vision of a pan-Arab confederation was secular, basically, right?
100%.
Mhm.
The the Arab nationalist movement was strictly secular, and there were no divisions between
Yeah,
different sects and different religions. The
yeah,
unifying force was nationalism.
yeah. And in Saddam's Iraq also, it was
Saddam's Iraq and Assad's Syria,
secular.
uh,
Sorry.
and yeah,
Mhm.
Libya,
Mhm.
all of them.
Right,
Religion was a religion only, and there were some
right.
social services provided by religious
Mhm.
organizations, like in any area, but it wasn't a political force. There was
Sure,
always some Islamist presence. I mean, the
sure, of
Islamic
course.
Brotherhood has been around
Right.
since the early 20th
Mhm.
century,
Mhm.
but they were small, and they really weren't as present politically and as
Mhm.
powerful as they are they
So it's
became.
to compare, sometimes comparing is not always the best, but just as a foundation to understand some of the current dynamics and archetypes even that are emerging. With the Jewish people, you have a people, we'll say, that didn't have a home and were sprinkled in many countries, especially in Eastern Europe, and sometimes exiled from place to place. And then when Israel was created through the Zionist project and the agreement of certain nations, the United Nations in Britain and the US and so on, there was a homeland and a place that the Jewish diaspora worldwide could focus on, say, that is home. We may not go and live there, but it's in our heart. We support it. We send money. It's a safe place for Jews. Whereas with the Arabs, there were many homes, many countries that were almost entirely Arab, or a huge majority of the population was Arab. So the combination of politics and religion um, with Israel, they're supposedly together, allegedly at least, maybe not in practice so much, but in the Arab world, there was much more variation and perhaps not so much a sense of persecution or isolation like in the Jewish community, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, they're this very different kind of. Actually, if you want to look at similarities, you'll find a lot of similarities between Jews and Palestinians,
Yeah,
right? Because today, Palestinians are scattered all over the world,
exactly. Yeah,
and
and don't have a home, an
don't have
official home. Yeah,
don't have a home, and there's
are being persecuted.
ongoing efforts to reduce their presence in the historic land of Palestine. They had the Nakba, which is the overarching trauma of the Palestinians in 1948, when they lost not just their homes but their society. So if you look at this experience and that of the Jews in Europe, and there are a lot of similarities. I mean, the Jewish refugees after the Second World War, they still couldn't find a home in Europe. No one wanted them.
Right.
They tried to come to North America. We didn't want them either.
Even Canada turned away a whole shipload of Jews coming from Europe and wouldn't
Yeah,
let them land.
none is too many,
No,
was what the
no,
Prime Minister of Canada of the day said.
right.
How many Jews will you accept? He said, none is
None is so
too
many.
many.
Yeah. Wow.
And the United States did the same thing. So they went to Palestine. I mean, it's interesting because I wrote a piece for the Globe recently, and I said, there was something called the Jewish question in Europe before they
Yeah.
became the Palestine questions in
Yeah.
Palestine.
Yeah.
The Jewish question in Europe was whether they would be accepted or not, and historically they weren't. In fact, some people say that the Balfour Declaration of 1917, that basically said Great Britain supports the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine,
Right.
was at least partially driven by a prejudice toward Jews. It's like
Yes.
put them somewhere else.
Yes. That was the question. What are we going to do with them? And
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end of World War II and the Holocaust, which was like the horrific final solution, the Nazis called it, um, what would have been humanitarian and decent would have been that the European countries, France, England, and so on, would have said, "This is so sad, so terrible. Come to our country. We will help you get settled, and you're welcome here." But no,
And
it
we
was
will
just the
put laws in
opposite.
place to protect your rights. And
Exactly. Yeah.
but like I said, they even after the Holocaust, they still
Yeah.
did not want Jews.
That's right.
The Jews to stay in Europe. And I heard a clip by Ilan Pappé, the Israeli historian. Ilan
Right.
Pappé, saw
Yeah.
that a couple of weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
He said, so some Europeans thought that creating a Western Jewish country in the middle of the Arab and Muslim worlds to get rid of the Jews would be a good idea. Well, my friend, it hasn't worked yet in 88 years. Since the beginning of the
And it's getting worse. Yeah.
20th century, it hasn't worked. I'm not espousing anything against the Jewish community here
No.
or in Israel or anywhere. I'm a human rights person who respects and supports,
Yes.
people of all backgrounds. I'm referring only to the historical mistakes,
Right.
that were made, and who's paying the price for these mistakes. It's not just the Palestinians. Jews are paying for the price too. I
Yeah.
mean, Israel was supposed to be the place where Jews will be safe.
Hmm.
Are they? They haven't been safe. And many Jews in the States now, they look at Israel and they look and say, well, we're a lot safer here. Despite incidents of anti-Semitism that went up
Yes.
in the last couple of years.
Mm.
But it hasn't worked. And in my opinion, it was a bad idea.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, there needed to be a just solution for Jewish suffering. And I do wholeheartedly support Jewish self-determination, but not in my bedroom, you know,
Right.
not in a place where I can't go back to anymore, not the place that my dad couldn't, or my mom couldn't go back to anymore. They were robbed of their homes,
Mhm.
and 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 it hasn't worked.
Mhm.
A solution should not have been at the expense of someone else.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
like Jeff, my colleague Jeff would say often, everything that Zionism gave to Jews, it took away from Palestinians.
Mhm.
And that's not something that can succeed forever.
They say that all sciences and social systems and philosophies are built in mathematics. It's like the king of sciences or the queen. So when you look at the mathematics of that equation, right from the get-go, there was an impossibility about it. Um, so given that there didn't seem to be any other solution at the time, 1945 or whatever. This is what happened, for better or for worse. And now the whole world, in a way, is dealing with it and maybe needs to deal with it, the community of nations. I've always felt that the Israel and Palestine, that little sliver of a state and country, is so important. It's like the heart of humanity, the Holy Land, they call it, important to Islam and
I
Christianity.
call it the unholy land.
Nowadays, yeah, the unholy land. But it's sort of exists at the converging of the three major
Right.
continents as population. So energetically or magnetically, it pulses with history and conflict and possibilities. And so the world's attention has been there um, since I was 14 years old. That's a long time ago. I'm 78 now. I used to read the newspaper every day, and I was always fascinated by what was going on there and that conflict. So given this situation, which more and more is sort of not just contained to that particular area geographically or politically, but it affects the United States and therefore Canada, the European countries, even China is throwing its 2 cents into the equation, and Russia and so on. In your experience as a Palestinian, because I'm interested in your personal experience as well as your role as a mediator, perhaps, and facilitator of authentic dialogue. Um, do you feel that we'll say, public opinion, so in Canada to start with, maybe in the United States as well, do you think that the the Jews in the diaspora and the non-Jewish population, the general population, um, understand or have an understanding of what you just described, the Nakba and the one country or one people being taken out of their homes so that another people can come in? And do you feel that people get that, or is there enough education for that to be understood?
Um, there is a silver lining for the events of the last 2 years, horrible as they have been.
Yeah.
And that is people are paying attention. The Palestinian narrative was almost never heard in
Right.
Western countries, particularly North America. And I can tell now, I mean, when we first started our book tour 2 years ago, we would ask people in the room if they ever heard the Nakba, and you'll get a scattering of hands raised.
Mm.
Over time now, you'll get two-thirds or three-quarters of the people in the room. They say,
Wow.
"Oh, we know what the Nakba is."
Big change, yeah.
Huge change. It's because of the enormity of these events and the enormity of how they landed here,
Hmm.
right? Uh, People had to had to pay attention, had to look and see, okay, well, what happened? How did this conflict from thousands of miles away end up in our living rooms here?
Yeah.
We've seen conflicts throughout sectors of society, from universities, workplaces. People were number of situations we were called to help with where people weren't able to work with each other anymore.
Hmm.
Of course, politically, there was a lot of tensions, and they continue to be. School boards suffered, hospitals. So and the reason for that is, in my opinion, it's twofold. One is the enormity of what happened on October 7 and every day since.
Yeah.
And two is that, a number of years ago, 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago, the North American left started picking up the Palestinian cause as a human rights issue.
Yeah.
Up until that point, the Palestinian cause was not seen as a human rights cause.
No.
When of course, it is fully a human rights cause, right? It's
Yeah.
about survival, it's about dispossession, it's about oppression, and
Yes.
finally it penetrated. And lastly, social media played a big role.
Uh-huh.
We are seeing what is happening in Gaza on a minute
Yes.
by minute basis on
Correct.
these little screens.
That's true. Whereas the mainstream media is still not really reporting the full picture.
They are not reporting as much as they could have. I can tell you that, but given the social media is showing all these images, the mainstream community itself had to cover the conflict differently than they did in the
Right.
past.
Right.
But
Interesting development. Yeah.
there was a truth out there that is no longer hidden. And if they try to hide it, of course,
Yes.
that will fall badly on them. So, yes, there has been a shift in North American society, even in the United States, the staunchest ally to Israel, 60 plus percent of Democrats now, they are convinced there's a genocide and that arms should be halted, to Israel should be halted. I mean, Biden was not as bad as Trump, of course, but he let this thing go on. He let it go on. He continued to send arms to Israel, and
Yeah.
he was talking about we need to have a peace, a ceasefire and peace while sending arms to Israel. I mean, what kind of a double message is that?
Right.
He should have put a stop to it. Just okay, no more.
Mhm.
He was too weak, apparently, to do that, unfortunately.
So there
And
seems to be a shift. It reminds me back in the 60s, I was young and then, power to the people, we used to say. And this development where the social media, TikTok and Twitter, and so on, they're showing the millions of people, tens of millions of people protesting peacefully around the world, Indonesia, Spain, you name it. Um, how this is causing the mainstream media to pull their socks up and say, "Oh, yeah, we better get with the program here, or we're going to lose our viewership." People are calling us hypocritical, and so it's causing a shift. So it's almost as if the those who are carrying the authority, the leaders of the country, the big time politicians and the corporations and so on, they still have the power. They've got the guns, but there's a growing kind of from the ground up democracy, you might call it, or the voice of the people is starting to have an effect and some power bit by bit. Would you say?
yes, I mean, often in democracies, that is, the people are ahead of the government
Right.
and their leanings and their thinking and their direction. Given enough information, they'd want people want the right thing to be done,
Yeah.
whereas the government is driven by all kinds of interests, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the fact that our Prime Minister Carney decided to recognize a Palestinian state, which is a big shift in policy,
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
because Canada, the West, all Western countries have been, supporting Israel to the hilt throughout, no matter what Israel did.
Yeah.
Only rarely would they stand up to Israel. Otherwise, they didn't. But the people now are saying this is wrong. This cannot happen. And as a prime minister, you see all these people going out in the streets saying this is wrong. It needs to stop. There's a genocide. It needs to stop. He had to change course.
Mhm.
Now, recognizing a state does not in itself do
No,
anything at this point.
it's it's a
It's symbolic.
token, but it's
It's
symbolic.
symbolic, but it sends a message. It sends a message to Palestinians that we still are hoping to have a state for you,
Yes.
and it sends a message to Israel that we're not happy with
Mhm.
what they're doing. Unfortunately, this wasn't coupled with sanctions
Mhm.
because this, to stop what's going on now, you need to put sanctions in
Yeah.
place.
There have to be some teeth in
And,
it. Yeah.
and the West hasn't done that yet. It looks like Spain is beginning to
Right.
put sanctions and restrictions on trade and
Yeah.
relations. But seriously, I mean, what more, would a prime minister be looking for to take action against this rogue regime that's becoming
Mhm.
in Israel now? I mean, every solution to them is a bombing. There's no other solution other to bomb things and people.
It reminds me in the world of psychotherapy. Um, there's an expression, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
That's right. That's right. That's precisely the case here.
So,
Yeah,
so
that's
in regard to a state, I've been hearing this for decades, the two-state solution. It's got a nice ring to it and a little bit of alliteration, two-state solution. But when you look at the map of what's left of the areas where Palestinians are actually allowed to live, it's just a fraction of a shadow of its former self, you might say. So do you think it's feasible to have a two-state solution, or is it more realistic to have one state, which is a civic society like Canada with equal rights for everybody, and maybe some international peacekeeping forces for a couple of generations to make sure until people can learn to trust each other and get along?
Yeah, I mean, there are those who now call it this two-state delusion.
Ah,
It's, whether it can happen or not, uh, theoretically it can, but
okay,
realistically, I don't see how.
right,
I mean, the settlements in the West Bank, for instance, have been only growing.
yeah,
There's now, I think, the population of the settlements in the West Bank since the beginning of the Oslo Accords in
right,
1993
yeah.
has quadrupled.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. So
So,
yeah,
and this was happening as the supposed peace process was
as
happening.
we
So,
speak, exactly, yeah.
um, you know, I'm not against a two-state solution because
Hmm.
even if we want to get to a point where there is one state with equal rights or some confederation or something, there needs to be a separation. It needs to be a government level
Yeah.
Palestine that can negotiate other options.
Okay, right,
But as
right.
long as Palestinians are under occupation,
Hmm.
how can they negotiate? They have nothing to negotiate with.
Right.
I mean, that's why every once in a while they will resort to violence because they see their land becoming smaller and smaller and their access and their rights becoming less and less.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
things blow up. And here in the West, we only hear about them when they blow up. But the oppression, the violence is ongoing on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Whether it's through checkpoints or demolitions of people's homes or um, arrests at 2 a.m. in the morning and then you're gone and you don't know when you will be let go. No charges. It's called
Yeah.
administrative detention. No charges against you. You can't defend yourself.
Yeah. Tremendous
Uh,
injustice. Yeah.
so this is has been ongoing on a daily basis. It
Yeah.
never stopped.
Yeah. What
It
do you
never
do with your, as an individual, as a man, and as a Palestinian and Arab and so on, aside from your, your role as a mediator and authentic dialogue, and I want to touch upon that before we finish, and we should end up soon. But how do you deal with what I would imagine would be an accumulated anger at injustice? Because when there is injustice, blatant injustice, it creates anger. It's a natural organic reaction. So how do you personally, somatically, even with your body, how do you manage that? You store it away in your liver, or hold your breath, or
it's yeah. I was lucky enough to be publishing this book at the right time
yeah,
uh, because of the book itself, but because it led us, Jeff and I, to
really.
become people who can help others in these
Mm,
kind of
mhm,
situations
mhm.
because we understand both narratives.
Right.
We understand both traumas.
Yeah.
We're not trying to blame anyone. We're trying to help people understand each other
Mhm.
and be driven by their values and not by their tribe. Uh, there was a time when values drove politics. These days, politics drives values.
Exactly.
And this is where we try to help people with. I'm also very involved with the Canadian Friends of Standing Together.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So this is a group. Standing Together is a movement in Israel that believes in full equality.
Yeah.
It's run by Palestinian and Jewish citizens of Israel. Calls for equality, freedom, human rights for everyone between the river and the sea. So that's the historic land of Palestine.
Exactly. Yeah.
And chapters, about 50 chapters, have sprouted around the world now. Friends of Standing Together after Gaza on October 7th.
Right.
And these are all people, Jews and Palestinians, Arabs, allies, who uh, believe in justice and equal rights for all. They're driven by their values and not by their tribes or by its politics.
That's right.
And we've been organizing events trying to pressure the government to do the right thing for both peoples.
Yes.
It used to be that the pro-Israel lobby was so strong that Canada's policy never changed,
Hmm.
and there was no sense of justice for Palestinians. There was always in the interest of Canada, United States, the West to stand behind their ally Israel,
Right. Right.
because Israel was considered to be part of the West
Yeah.
and could help Western interest in the
Yeah.
Middle East.
Right.
If you look at the way things are, today, it's doing the exact opposite. And that's part of why the policy is changing. So governments do not always do the right thing. They do what serves their interests best.
Yeah.
And with a weak Palestinian lobby here, it was a lot easier for governments to go along, with the Jewish lobby. Plus, the West still feels guilty about the way it treated Jews historically.
Hmm. So I'm
And
thinking,
yeah,
sorry for jumping in there. I do that occasionally. um, I'm
okay.
thinking that the Canadian government, for example, as an entity, and this could be the same in other Western countries as well, the Jewish the organizations are very well organized, as you said, for 100 years or more, and the Arab organizations not so much. Although the Arab population is growing and there's more consciousness now in the general population about Palestine and the history. What I'm thinking is that in order for our governments move very slowly usually um, to the voice of the people. But if organizations such as Standing Together, and I'm going to put the link below our video so people can check them out, their website. So if organizations like this, which really do represent both sides, Jewish and Palestinian, Israeli Jewish and Palestinian, if these groups grow in their popularity and their voice, their representation, and they go to the government and say, look, we would like to sit down and suggest some changes in policy. And we have a wide uh, spectrum of members from all different backgrounds, would have a lot more influence than just the Arabs going or the Palestinian community
Precisely,
going. Yeah.
precisely.
So just before, I know you have an appointment and we're going to run out of time, but can you talk a little bit about the unity and the transcending the divide, the polarity, and about the book, to tell us a little bit about the wall between what Palestinians and Jews don't want to know about each other. It's a fantastic title, by the way.
Can you be more specific? I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question.
just share with us a little bit about the book that you've
About the
written with
book.
Jeffrey, yeah,
Right.
and what that experience was like, and what you're finding. I think it was written 2 years ago, right around the time of the October 7th, right?
Well, it
And
was released 4 days before October 7.
right, what timing?
We had a reception here in Toronto with over 100 people, Israelis, Jews, Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, Christians. Everybody was in the room celebrating this book.
My goodness. Well, the
And,
timing is
and
maybe
it's,
you incited, it was so powerful your message that no people couldn't stand it. So I'm just kidding.
yeah, I mean,
All your fault.
so yeah, I mean, the timing was just uncanny. It's just the book really was meant to explain both communities to each other,
Mhm.
explaining the narratives without judgment, and also explaining the role trauma plays in the way people react and behave.
Yeah.
And we know here we have, Palestinians and Jews are both very traumatized communities. Jews, of course, by historic anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, and Palestinians by the Nakba and the loss of identity and the loss of Palestinian society, loss of a home, loss of means of survival.
Right.
I'm not comparing the Nakba to the Holocaust. I try to make that clear because we're not comparing the two,
Sure.
but both of them were traumas for their respective communities.
Yeah.
And what that means is that to this day, the way a Jew or a Palestinian reacts to anything they see or hear goes back to that trauma at a subconscious level.
Yeah.
You to a Palestinian, when they hear someone say, "Oh, October 7th," the Palestinian's first reaction is, "Wait a minute, this didn't start on October 7th. It started in 1948
Yeah.
or 1917 when Balfour
Balfour
promised
Declaration.
our home
Yeah.
away."
Yeah.
So, and a Jew, when a Palestinian says, "I want my home back," I want to be able to go back to my village or my town, or they want to kick us into the sea, and they want to annihilate us, and
Yes. Uh,
because of that
yeah.
experience before that, they tried to annihilate Jews. Finally,
Yes.
I got it right.
Yeah.
In Europe, so there's an important role that these two traumas play. And one more thing that we try to put forward in the book is that there are advocacy groups that manipulate the traumas to
Hmm.
their own advantage for their own agendas, which is unfair to either community,
Yes.
because Jews have been taught to fear Arabs and Palestinians and Muslims,
Yeah.
and they live in fear. I mean, one of the first things I learned when I started talking to Jews and Zionists is that the fear is real. They
Hmm.
live in fear. Now, I can understand that of course, there is anti-Semitism. There are those who hate Jews for being what they are, for being Jews.
Right.
But the level of fear that they live in is not commensurate with the level of risk and danger, which has been, manipulated, and because these organizations thrive on the fear of the community. That's why people give them money,
Yeah.
and to protect the community.
Yes.
There are, of course, similar organizations on the Palestinian side, but you're comparing this size to, this size in
Yes.
terms of impact and
That's true.
organization and
Well,
funding.
there's a phrase you've heard of PTSD, of course, and we all have some of that. We all have trauma of some kind, even from the womb or transgenerational trauma and so on. But with the Jews, uh, and now the Palestinians as well, maybe more recently, there's something that psychologists call OSTD, which is ongoing
Hmm,
stress trauma rather than post. It's still ongoing. So sometimes even the slightest intimation of violence or anti-Semitism, for example, it triggers a whole
it does.
hundreds of years of pain and suffering. So it seems to be out of balance, but it's nonetheless that trauma has not been
Yep,
healed. No matter how
yep.
many people have gone to psychiatrists, there's still a
To,
boatload of it.
there's no doubt in my mind that to most Jews, October 7th felt like another
Yeah,
Holocaust.
yeah, exactly.
Now,
Right.
clearly, it wasn't another Holocaust, but it was a large loss of life
Hmm.
in one day that could not but trigger the feelings of we're being annihilated again.
Yeah, it's understandable. Yeah,
To Palestinians, like you said, it's ongoing. The
yeah,
Nakba started in 48.
yeah.
It continues because the loss of land, the oppression, the loss of identity, the
Mhm.
erasure of Palestinian culture and Palestinian rights, they continue to this day. I mean, we see in Gaza what's happening, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So it's ongoing, and of course, that makes it a lot more uh, impactful on one's
Mhm.
sort of daily
Mhm.
life.
Mhm. So just
Um,
before we finish, Raj, sorry to cut it short, but I invited Jeffrey this morning to, right at the end, to speak from his heart just for half a minute, what he would say to Jews in Canada, for example, who might be very wary or suspicious of this kind of dialogue that you're posing. And he spoke. It was beautiful. So I'm wondering if, with your Palestinian or Arab brothers and sisters who are hopeless, perhaps, of even ever having a voice, um, or angry, or suspicious, or fearful, what would you say to them about what you and Jeffrey are doing to sort of reassure them or entice them to come into the circle to sit down at the table?
Look, many in my community do not understand the need for dialogue, for finding common ground, for at least finding ways for us to live here. We're not talking about solving the problem over there.
Yeah.
To live here next to another community, without having to be fearful of them, to have to avoid them at work or in school, or have them, have someone, be um, alarmed when they see Free Palestine on someone's shirt,
Hmm.
that, my message to Jews is that, that Free Palestine doesn't mean killing Jews.
No.
I spoke 2 days ago at the Haaretz conference here in Toronto,
Oh, yes, right. Yeah.
and there were 500 participants in the room and more online.
Yes.
And
Great.
I told them what I, as a Palestinian, expect from them if we are to have respectful relations.
Hmm.
And I told them about 1948, that they have to take responsibility for their role in what happened in 1948. I told them that we do here now land recognition of our own past. We recognize the land that we're living on belonged to someone else, and we took it from them. As a beginning to any peaceful relations between communities, you have to recognize the harm that was done before you are able to actually build good relations. The recognition itself doesn't end, it's a beginning. Doesn't, it's a beginning to for us to be able to rate each other
Yes.
respectfully. So anyway, what I tell to Palestinians is I have not given up a single iota of my Palestinian rights, of my support for the Palestinian cause by talking to Jews and Zionists.
Right.
In
Great.
fact,
Yeah.
use that opportunity of talking to them to educate them of what my issues are and what rights I want to have that they are responsible for.
Hmm. Right. So what you're saying is your voice in this situation is actually directly or indirectly strengthening the development of equal rights for Palestinians rather than taking away from it by the fact that you also acknowledge and accept the Jewish pain and trauma and come from a place
Right,
of
right.
unity. Right?
Yeah, yeah. In our tour of the country the last 2 years, we've spoken to so many people, regular Canadians,
Yeah.
not involved directly in the conflict, who said to us, "This is the first time we hear this narrative. We've never heard it before." How come we've never heard it before is what they ask us. So we're spreading the narrative, both narratives. Uh, and in an effort to have a better understanding of this unhappy situation that we're both in, here in
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. Well, it's very important work, Raja, and bless you in your efforts, and may you have many confirmations. And I'm going to be following you and uh, maybe attending some of your talks and so on.
Okay, you better
And
be there.
I'll be there. Yes, sir. So thank
Yeah,
you so much for your
thank you
putting
for
this.
the opportunity to speak with you and be on your program, and I'll be happy to do that again anytime.
Yeah, and Jeffrey said maybe next time we can have both of you together. That would be make a nice flow as well.
If you can handle both of us at the same time.
The more the merrier. Thanks again.